Welcome everybody. Götz Werner, as many of you will know, was very important for the Freiburg Institute for Basic Income Studies as well as for the Götz Werner Chair of Economic Policy and Constitutional Theory, because he was the main funder of both institutions. And especially the Götz Werner Chair, but also inside Freebies, we discuss mainly basic income, which was at the heart of Götz Werner's thoughts, and we discuss it from a viewpoint what we call at the Götz Werner Chair the new Ordoliberalism. And there are some arguments why Götz Werner was highly empathetic with giving this institute to Freiburg, which is in the tradition of Ordoliberalism. And Götz Werner's proposals were with respect to three aspects. First, his argument was that German Ordoliberalism, this means freedom regulated only by constitutional rules, is a good framework for basic income in theory as well as in practice. And he wanted to couple a little bit more theory and practice. Second, Benedictus Hardorp, an advisor and good friend of Götz Werner, a promoter of financing universal basic income by a value-added tax, received his PhD in economics in the economics department from the University of Freiburg. So therefore was also a close, academic connection. Third, there was the support for developing a modern scientific version of ordoliberalism which can test relevance, level, the financing options and the effects of UBI. All that together convinced Götz Werner that one could try to fund an institute and a distinguished chair, especially at this university. So, and there were some challenges out of that proposal of UBI for the new ordoliberalism, which were highly interesting for restructuring research at the chair. For example, the first one was the idea of social contracting and ex-ante social contracting in the lab. And I want to quote Götz Werner, especially from bilateral meetings in preparing the Götz Werner chair as well as Freebies. For example, he asked me how to make UBI as a basic social rule for modern societies acceptable even for rich and special interested persons. And related to that was at another Götz Werner tribute at Stuttgart a remark of Johannes Stüttgen, who was a scholar of Joseph Beuys. He argued Götz Werner took care that beside all firm hierarchies and vertical integration of DM, all levels of firm staff and every member of the firm should be integrated in the whole firm project. What does this mean, especially from the viewpoint of social contracting in theory and experiments? The second challenge of UBI for new ordoliberalism is that what is at heart for my approach of new ordoliberalism, namely ex post stable social contracting. Here, a quote from Götz Werner again: what are useful impulses, this means from my point of view criteria and effects, for making a UBI society in a stable way, more cooperative, e.g., for example, for care work. So stability was very important, and I transported stability towards social sustainability and ex post stable contracting in a society. And the third thing of ordoliberalism is liberty and freedom. Here Götz Werner asked me, what UBI level is really necessary for a society with real free people? That's a very important question, where I said, okay, we have some liberty arguments, but how to fit that what is real freedom, yeah, might be very interesting. Fortunately, other philosophers, just like Philippe van Parijs, add before that some useful logic to that. So, another argument was on ex post governance. This means governance when you are confronted with unforeseen contingencies, with disasters, when it's too costly to write all contingencies down in a contract. And here Götz Werner asked me, do we always need complex? And I would now add to this ex ante, then Götz Werner, optimized, but I would add to this ex post, then Götz Werner, failing social systems when we could implement such a simple and robust idea. I would like to add to it, robust and simple idea is UBI. That was his main question. That's a request on ex post governance. Yeah? Is it useful, not useful to have a feasible system even when we cannot optimize over it because we cannot use all statistics we might have in mind? Yeah? Another very important aspect of Götz Werner was the argument of a paradigm shift. Yeah, Götz Werner argued here, and I quote him again from our bilateral talks, in my enterprise I learned that I have to delegate and decentralize management power towards every worker so that he identifies potential or self-determination, creativity and innovation by himself. I understood that this supported all stakeholders of DM due to mutual confidence. That's also very important and clearly related to the argument of Johannes Stüttgen, how he interpreted Götz Werner's elaboration of an enterprise. And next, what is the potential of self-determined, I would say time-sovereign, and intrinsically motivated individuals for voluntary work for societal roots? So, these are the quotes who give me a lot of direction towards how to ask, is old ordoliberalism just enough to solve that? Are there some questions who sound stupid? This means non-scientific from my point of view. And how could we, mingling on it, that we integrate it? And for that I developed an approach who was developed before Götz Werner asked me these questions, yes, but I developed further an approach which I would like to call, since 2017, New Ordoliberalism. And in this New Ordoliberalism, from the viewpoint of social policy and the social state, UBI is an essential part of that ordoliberalistic approach to the state and of a just social contract. So in traditional ordoliberalism, this means the well-known Freiburg School of Constitutional Economics, we see that this is more or less efficiency-based. And there are some good reasons for it, yeah. But in the new view, you can add to this, from the viewpoint of social contract analysis, additional aspects which are usually not solved by the traditional approach. For example, in the modern social contract approach, not in my approach, but in the usual modern social contract approach, collective decisions are made in an ex-ante view on fair rules. That's traditional social contract, yeah? And to that you have usually the compliance assumption. When you have agreed on rules, just like in every contract, you have to comply to the rules. If this will be the case, or if the contract will erode or not, is not the question. You have to comply to the rules. Everyone is trained in that usually this should take place, but especially in multi-person contracts, we know that contracts are breached, are eroded, and so on and so forth. Therefore, for me, this view, which is integrated into traditional ordoliberalism, is not enough, this ex ante view. We have to add to this so-called ex post constraints. Yeah? For example, as additional items, that these ex ante fair rules have to survive an ex post justice check. This means that inside these rules, yes, if the individuals live in accordance to the rules, they have to believe always that these rules are just. If some, or in the extreme case, all individuals argue the ex ante fair rules are not fair ex post, then this contract will not be enforced anymore. That's plausible, I would say. And we call that sometimes conflict proofness, because individuals then organize a conflict against the social contract, to destabilize it, or we call it renegotiation proofness. Do individuals have an interest in renegotiate rules? And it would be good that we take care from an ex ante point of view on the ordoliberal stage, on the contracting stage, that the rules are renegotiation proof. Yeah, that's a demanding aspect. Second, individuals cannot manipulate the rules politically or individuals strategically. Yeah, that's what we call strategy proofness. There might be a rule which is self-enforcing or which is renegotiation proof, but only because individuals adjust strategically. This means, for example, they do not tell the true preferences, yes, and are lying because of that they receive a higher benefit. Then this is clear, strategic behavior erodes the real content of a rule. Strategy proofness. And third, rules can be either self-enforcing. We will see that this might be the basic idea of Götz Werner's idea of an enterprise, that I convince individuals that their contribution is important so that they believe that they are important and like to contribute to the enterprise. If everyone is doing that, then all individuals would like to stay in the enterprise extensively and intensively, and they do then a good job. Or we can organize, and you see also Götz Werner's idea of the enterprise is a mixed system. We can organize hierarchical enforcement power. For example, that the manager can force simple workers to do this or that, and if not, then they are fired. That's then the governance constraint. Sometimes self-enforcement works. Sometimes you need a governance constraint, a hierarchy, so that the firm works in a good way. And these three arguments, renegotiation proofness, this means the ex post justice check, strategy proofness, and the governance constraint with self-enforcement or hierarchical power defines that what I would like to add to ordoliberalism, namely social sustainability, durability, stability, and capacity of the state to organize a long living ordoliberal society. Not only the ex ante argument of the traditional one, but also the social sustainability argument of the new ordoliberalism. So, then I would like to go into the different arguments to see how this contributes to Götz Werner's views, how this new ordoliberalism contributes to Götz Werner's requests and questions, and how Götz Werner has contributed by his view to how to examine this kind of social contracting. Because sometimes correlations between both Götz Werner's view and the social contracting view are highly intriguing and inspiring, and to detect them is very important. Now, the ex-ante contracting on UBI in theory and experiment shows how social contracting works. It puts individuals in the experiment, but also in the idea of the thought experiment of the theory, in a controlled situation where individuals generate in that situation impartiality. For example, if you do not know if you will be in the future rich, poor or middle class, then you take all three positions into consideration. Then you are impartial to the three positions. If you know that you are poor, then you are against the rich and perhaps also against the middle class and the other perpetuations of the situation. And in social contracting, the argument is you contract in a situation where you have enough uncertainty that you are impartial. And this generates a specific kind of fairness, namely symmetrical and fair decision power. No one has an advantage to manipulate in the contracting stage rules against the interests of others for his own interests, because the individuals are impartial. Only then they can construe fair results and fair rules, and from that we can derive justice principles. Many philosophers, just like John Rawls, or economists just like Harsanyi and Buchan, applied this scheme in one or another version. And even philosophers not dealing with social contracting, like Jürgen Habermas, developed very nearby that what he called his deliberative democracy, in German der herrschaftsfreie Diskurs, power-free finding of rules. So, the situation of impartiality is very important. For that you need that what Rawls called the wheel of ignorance, or the wheel of uncertainty, or the wheel of unseen aspects in the future. The interesting aspect was that UBI plays in social contract experiments a very prominent, perhaps also the dominant role in the results. Therefore, you have to integrate it. And in an experiment, we base it on 4 different distributive or distributional schemes, which is based on a Frohlich-Oppenheimer experiment in the 1990s. And the question was, if we have different distributive schemes, what would you like to choose when you are impartial, are interested of the fairness of the social contracting, fairness of the rules? The first argument, the first scheme was maxi-min. That's the Rawls idea, maximizing the position of the worst of individual. The second was maximizing the average, or the sum of all incomes, or of all utility positions. That's then utilitarianism, or in a dynamic interpretation, maximizing growth as a sum of all incomes over time. Then what was interesting and what was also tested by Frohlich-Oppenheimer was maximizing the average so that a certain income floor is guaranteed. That's UBI, for everyone. Or maximizing the average so that an income floor is guaranteed and also a certain income ceiling is reached. Ceiling is the range, as a measure of inequality. Then you can see with that experiment, you can ask implicitly what is poverty, the level of that income floor for everyone, because you do not know if you will become poor or rich. And a second, by that ceiling, if individuals are inequality averse and therefore interested in solving also inequality. And here we have a certain income distribution experiment with some numbers. You see it here on that slide, which income distribution to choose unanimously. A contract is unanimous decision making. Every part, every side of the contract has to sign, and in a large society, all individuals. And in an experiment, all probants, which could become here high income, after signing the contract, medium high, medium low, or low. And then it was interesting to see, do they take care about the average, about the basic income, this means the floor constraint, and or about the range, which is also different. Behind that scheme is clearly a different tax scheme, which imposes more taxes sometimes on the middle class, sometimes more on the rich. Therefore, the basic income can be higher even when the range is higher, because it depends on how you finance it. So, the instructions were very simple, and we organized the chat in that computerized experiment. And in the chat room, you know what a chat room is, the individuals could exchange arguments to vote on this or on that scheme unanimously. Yes? So therefore you see, social contracting is then not artificial, for finding norms as a normative political approach and setting the base for normative political discussion. It's at the heart of real life of basic rules, because you can argue some of the rules, are always debated out. This means they never survive such a test, so therefore these rules are not good rules for society, because they were refuted always in the chat. They never found unanimous agreement. For example, just like the ability to pay principle, on tax justice. So we had during many experiments in the SOCO-Lab between 2013 and 2018 consistent results, which focused my interest more and more on basic income. There was a general support of basic income schemes as the basic principle of fair income distribution. And therefore I argued for myself, isn't that then a new version, a new principle of the social market economy? Should we move from means-tested and targeted social systems towards basic income when the individuals always try to argue on payments for everyone on the same level? And the sequential logic in the chat was very easy to detect, namely basic income first. This should cover justice or social insurance, however you would like to call it, because the probants were not experts in the field, but they had a feeling about what justice and what insurance could be. And then beside that, the question and the choice of more inequality averse basic income schemes or less inequality averse. So how much inequality is important for producing fairness, but this under a certain basic income scheme. But the basic income scheme was not disputed, and if that is solved, then market transactions and market distribution could be called acceptable. Here you see very clearly equity, justice first, organized by a basic income scheme, which sets all individuals free to participate in a society, and then participate based on that in a market economy and generating efficiency second. And this is a paradigm shift, a paradigm change. Social market economy means now justice first by basic income instead of efficiency first. What is our approach of the, say, traditional social market economy in Germany? Efficiency first, and if it's necessary, then we argue on means-tested systems, just like Hartz IV, Bürgergeld, or this means citizen money, or something just like health insurance, and pension insurance. It's an inversion of the basic principle, which I found very interesting and which seems to fit the ideas of Götz Werner. Götz Werner would subscribe, I guess, to this paradigm shift also. And he would subscribe to that in his own terms of rhetorics by arguing that's a new idea. And the new idea leads us lead us towards a paradigm shift. And that's what we need, and the individuals have to understand it and have to integrate it into their thoughts. Only then it may work. Okay, and a specific case which I had in mind which came at the latest point when Götz Werner said this, I had the quote concerning my firm, to motivate all stakeholders of the firms, not only my workers, to participate voluntarily, clearly with a certain earned income, but also intrinsically, that they see that their work is useful, needful, and so on, but also to integrate the customers as a part of DM, what is clearly a stakeholder approach and not a shareholder approach, because the shareholders in this case would have been the family and other owners, but the other ones should be integrated, at least to a sufficient degree. Then you can connect this kind of corporate social responsibility vision of Götz Werner. You can couple this with ex ante social contracting. That's very interesting. And Johannes Stüttgen, in his Phänomenos contribution at the Götz Werner Tribute in Stuttgart, has shown this from his point of view, and I have reconstructed it and interpreted it. Once again, Stüttgen said, more or less, Götz Werner took care that beside all firm hierarchies and vertical integration of DM, all levels of staff and every member of the firm should be integrated in the whole firm project. And added to that, my second quote means customers only. And then you see customers also. And then Götz Werner's CSR vision, CSR for corporate social responsibility, is a social contract view, because making members participants and thinkers about the whole thing, the enterprise, the whole thing, not only their own position, arguing I'm a minor person, therefore I do not take care of what the managers and the higher hierarchical levels do. I pick up my money, do something, and then I go home. No, this is totally hierarchical thinking. I would like to pick up this person's towards a more encompassing view of enterprise, which we call in our science corporate social responsibility. So the social contract stage under this kind of uncertainty, contractarian uncertainty, leads to thinking about the whole project. I do not know if I will become the top level earner, if I will be in the middle position, or if I will be very low. I know I'm low, but let me think, if I would not know this, if I would move in the position of any other member, what would be the best and fair rule for us? This means, I think, also for the other ones, if I would transfer my position into the other ones. And the rich ones, or the hierarchical higher ones, have to do that also with respect to the lower ones. And everyone has to show that he has recapitulated this kind of social contract thinking. Only then it works, and only then you find an implicit unanimous agreement on how the firm should work. And that's clearly a corporate social responsibility vision of the enterprise called DM, from my point of view. And you see now the general social contracting may be applied to firms. The new ordoliberal approach may be applied to firms. New ordoliberal vision of firms is in coincidation with Götz Werner's vision. And then you can ask, okay, Götz Werner's intuitive leadership in DM, how can it be reconstructed from a scientific point of view, and how can this scientific point of view develop Götz Werner's vision towards a more comprehensive approach by adding aspects Götz Werner had not in mind. Götz Werner was very open for adding useful aspects to his ideas, or to contradict its own ideas whenever one has good arguments. And here a collaboration I have with an Italian researcher called Lorenzo Sacconi, is exactly on that, because he applied social contracting to the corporate social contract, to CSR, and the result was the main constraint is we have to find for corporate social responsibility based on social contracting self-enforcing rules. The rules have to be stabilized by the participants in themselves, in their goodwill, in their contributing to the firm and so on. And we have studied that at the chair, and we will study it in a summer school in next summer. What does this mean for corporate social responsibility and for the social contract approach to society? To see the relationship between Götz Werner's view and on the firm and Götz Werner's view on society, which is both, that's my argument, both based on social contract thinking. Even if you don't need that to develop the ideas, it's useful to study it in that way. So Götz Werner more or less said, another quote, "I have to pick up every member and customer of the firm. This works only when they are convinced and see their own benefit in this vision." That's the self-enforcing constraint, nothing else. And we can study in science the self-enforcing constraint. And Lorenzo Sacconi has done this in computerized experiments. When do the probants find a unanimous agreement, which is renegotiation proof because it's self-enforcing? A very demanding argument, but he found some aspects under what conditions such a thing is self-enforcing. And this also guards the old-fashioned shareholder view, which we still have in our society. Capitalists are the bosses, and they structure what the workers have to do, towards a stakeholder view, of Götz Werner. And this also coincides, that's my argument, but this has to be developed further in science with Sacconi's and my own CSR social contract approach. So therefore there's a straightforward correlation between Werner's vision of the enterprise and the new ordoliberalism of societal rules. New ordoliberalism is originally approach on societal, of emerging and judging societal rules, versus Götz Werner's idea is on rules for the enterprise. But both approaches might lead to justifying basic income. And that's a very, very important thing. And this makes Götz Werner's vision scientific from my point of view. So this means such enterprises coincide with the new ordoliberal approach to society, and the scientific problem is now find self-enforcing rules, whereas self-enforcing rules are a subset, that's what you can show in scientific investigations, of the renegotiation proof rules. All self-enforcing rules lead to renegotiation proofness. This means that the whole enterprise or the whole society is stable, because no one likes to renegotiate the proofs due to contributing to self-enforcement, or due to the fact that a hegemon or a hierarchical construction of the firm or society stabilizes the interests away from renegotiation. The problem is now, this is not necessarily strategy proof. There might be individuals who said, okay, I will show that I'm self-interested in the enterprise, And now my aspect is to earn more money. Yeah? I comply to the rules, but I manipulate all the others, and they do not see that I let erode renegotiation-proof rules because they are renegotiation-proof, but the rules are moving away from their original meanings because I manipulate them. For example, by giving wrong informations about my own status or about the status of others and about the environment and so on. But this shows in the end that new ordoliberalism can integrate Götz Werner's CSR view and add it to Knoll and of the society, and to add it to Knoll of a firm. Knoll means new ordoliberalism, and to develop Götz Werner's CSR view further and more fully by adding to his ideas of self-enforcement, the ideas of strategy-proofness, yeah, and the ideas of conflict-freeness, and the ideas of liberty. Yeah. Next, I want to develop an argument which is more relevant for ex post stability of the social contract, yeah, not so much about ex ante. We have seen ex post stability of renegotiation proofness might be very important, but now another ex post criterion is strategy proofness, I mentioned earlier. Yeah? And here a very classical strategic relationship. I have to show now a strategic relationship, which you might know is the so-called famous prisoner's dilemma. Yeah? The prisoner's dilemma is a dilemma in which it does not pay to cooperate. Formally it would pay because cooperation means higher payoffs for everyone than defection. This means not to cooperate, but because a defection, one-sided defection, pays if the other one plays the cooperative strategy. The defector would exploit the cooperative willingness of the other players. Both will play non-cooperative. Yeah? We call it a dominant strategy. Because you know you will be exploited when you are cooperative, you defect and play non-cooperative. Because the other one knows the same, you play defection, non-cooperation. And that's a dilemma, because both know in cooperation they will have a higher benefit. Yeah? So, and this is shown here by a certain B matrix. I will not explain the B matrix too much, but you see here the traditional rational prisoner's dilemma solution is defection and defection, the strategy from both participants and not cooperation. Yeah? Even if the payoff under cooperation, which might be 4 for everyone, is higher than 0 under defection, because under defection I assume nothing happens. Yeah? So, and now behavioral economists have added to that a behavioral empirical so-called reciprocal fairness. Yeah? They call it some reciprocity is there with a kindness function. This means if I expect that you are nice, I will be nice. Yeah? Niceness will mean here if I expect that you cooperate, I will cooperate. If I expect that you will defect, I will defect. But under this kindness function, I receive an additional non-monetary payoff due to bilateral kindness, and I receive a punishment, yeah, less perhaps than 0, yeah, when you punish me because I defected. Yeah? So we have a punishment and an altruistic structure in it. So players are then, one can show it, only conditionally cooperative, and we have not a dominant strategic solution, defection of both, we have multiple equilibria. Yeah, this means both cooperate under a certain kindness level and both defect if the kindness level is not high enough. Yeah? And what is now interesting to make the argument short is you can show in such an experiment, and if you would like to elaborate it further, look at the slides, yeah, in the social contracting stage, where you might not have knowledge about how high the scope of kindness is. Yes, it may be between a lower bound and a higher bound. Yeah, for example, here between the parameter alpha for kindness may be between 1 and 2. Yeah, so you don't know that. That's the constitutional uncertainty, the wheel. Then you choose a payment for everyone, a UBI, in a certain level. Here it is 0.75, because you insure yourself against the worst case of the lowest alpha. This means that you have a low kindness function, that you are relatively aggressive when you would like to punish the other one for defection, and you are only in a mild way nice when the other one is nice. Yeah? And very interesting, here a UBI does not solve a social policy problem or poverty or inequality. It rescues and secures cooperation in a society. Yeah? And it leads you to a strategy-proof social contract, because due to a UBI, everyone is unconditionally willing to cooperation. And it does not pay strategically to exploit the cooperative willingness of the other one by defection. But this works only if you add an unconditional and universal basic income to conditional cooperative business dilemmas. This means with some kindness, with some relationship between the individuals, because without the UBI you can guarantee only we do not know the value of alpha, the value of the scope, the size of the kindness function. It may work or not. This is not very satisfying, but with UBI it is completely satisfying. So the result may hold also, I have proved it, for asymmetric business dilemmas and for multi-person business dilemma. UBI make the society more cooperative when you take into account ex post stable social contracting, because UBI makes the society strategy proof. Yeah? And that's very important. In such a system, you don't play the strategy because you would like to exploit your opponent. Yeah? You play cooperation with him, and you know the other one will also play cooperation, because the UBI beginning from a certain level is high enough. And the threshold of UBI, here it's 0.75, is shown and can be shown for many other numerical examples also. My last argument will be on liberty and income. Yeah? And with liberty and income, here on slide 15, you see also a graph, but it's very plausible and intuitively to show you can very often guarantee formal liberty, but formal liberty which may be worthless. This means you are free, but you don't have an income to exercise your freedom, your liberty in a material way. Yeah? I will show that this is what I call the Libertarian Trap. Yeah? Making everyone liberal, yeah? But you have to work hard first that you can exercise your liberty. And if you do not reach the goal, yeah, then you end up in worthless liberty, but that's your responsibility. That's a libertarian trap. And on the other hand, there is the problem of priceless liberty. This means, and especially authoritarian governments try to do that, and you see it in China, and it was successful in Chile also, to increase wealth and income so that you can buy out individuals out of basic liberties, even basic liberties, for receiving wealth. Yeah? You don't have liberty, but you have a lot of wealth and you can buy what you want. Yeah? But if you don't do what we want, then heads down. Yeah? That's the authoritarian trap, I would say. And there exists a third position, which is called real freedom, which is highly related, I would say, to Götz Werner's idea about that, and clearly to the idea of the philosopher Philippe van Parijs. Here, voluntary and self-determined trade-off between liberty and wealth exists. You can argue, okay, I have materialized liberty, but I would like to get more wealth. Therefore, I sell my time in a self-determined, sovereign way to receive more wealth. But the time I have sold, with that degree, I'm not free anymore. So therefore, there's a trade-off between income and liberty, say here time sovereignty, but this works only if you start from a certain degree, which we can call a certain level, which we have to call real freedom. In formal freedom, you have to sell your time because you need income to survive. Yeah? Then it's only formal liberty and not real liberty, real freedom. So this third argument is effective, not forced decision making. And you see here, that's my argument of new ordoliberalism defined by this trade-off on voluntary and self-determined decision between liberty and selling, for example, time for working, yeah, then this is what you do by yourself. And you have your time sovereignty, you can move a little bit away from it, but you do it voluntarily. And if you like liberty more, yeah, then you still live in the range of real freedom. And how to guarantee that range of real freedom? That's very important. And here now on slide 16, you see the Libertarian Trap. And that's, for example, the trap of that famous approach, highly related to basic income, called the negative income tax, mainly developed by Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman was a very, very clever guy because he saw very early, I have to do something against the disincentive to work aspect. And I have to do something that this kind of basic income, yeah, is too expensive. And these are, think about it, the two main reasons from the enemies of basic income, that they argue it's too expensive, we cannot finance it, and then individuals become lazy because they don't have the incentive to work hard. Yeah, and Milton Friedman solved it by arguing we add to the payment, to the unconditional payment, yeah, an argument of the poverty gap. The payment has to be so low that individuals have an incentive to add earned income to that unconditional income because they are too poor to participate in society or to survive. Then they will do something, the argument that they will become lazy is over. And the second is, I integrate it into an integrated tax transfer system that they receive whenever they organize market income. This means earned income. The tax is integrated into the payment from the state, so they receive only a net amount. The budget is comparatively small compared to a cross system where you pay the full basic income and you have to finance it completely by taxation. Two clever points, but the big problem is he cannot guarantee a way out of the libertarian trap. He is exactly in the libertarian trap. Individuals have to move out of the libertarian trap, and if they do not succeed, on the slide I have several reasons for it, up to the argument that if you move out of the libertarian trap, it may be that you end up in the authoritarian trap. Because this means from neoliberalism you move to authoritarianism. Think about it. My argument is that's the argument why many neoliberals were firstly members of the German AfD party, and why many neoliberals work together with right-wing persons, with radical right-wings and with authoritarians. Here is the reason, because authoritarian trap is what the authoritarians, what the right-wings like, and libertarian trap is what the neoliberals like, even if they would like to see, okay, you can go out, you have the freedom to it, but if you fail, then you fail. Yeah, we will not help you. Then you fail, you had the choice to do that. yeah, your education was wrong or something else, you stuck in the libertarian trap. And I said, that's nonsense. So this is my argument behind that is from a paradigm shift point of view, that this kind in the libertarian trap is that individuals are convinced, the neoliberals are convinced, that we live in a society of what I call paternalistic capitalism. The capitalists argue you workers are on your own responsibility to move out of formal freedom to real freedom. And then you can participate. And my argument is clearly a paradigm shift. We have to guarantee real freedom, and then the individuals make exchange. Think about what I said. Liberty, you see here, combined with fairness first, and then exchange towards more efficiency in the way you really like. The Authoritarian Trap, to be short on that, that's on slide 17, is the priceless liberty argument. This is not at heart of UBI, but I try to convince you now that UBI helps also to move out of the authoritarian trap. Once again, authoritarian trap means authoritarian government would like to buy from you even basic liberties by giving you a lot of wealth. Yeah? Therefore, many governments like China and so on need a lot of growth to compensate individuals towards loyalty, or to buy a lot of police to organize repression that the individuals would not like to exercise basic liberties. And you see they had big problems, yeah, when they had to solve the problem in Hong Kong, because the inhabitants of Hong Kong were not interested in more wealth. They said we need more liberty. Whereas the Chinese want to convince them, move into the authoritarian trap. Yeah, you can earn a lot of money. They said we would like to move out of authoritarian trap. You even don't give us basic liberties. Yeah, for marginal liberties we will not discuss, but we would like to move into the marginal liberties and do the trade-off between income, wealth on the one side and liberty on the other side. This means time sovereignty by ourselves and not by command of the government. And you have seen this ended up in a conflict between the people in Hong Kong and the Chinese government. Yeah? And that's the authoritarian trap. We have these examples in the real world. In Germany, the problem of Hartz IV, and we will see if it is still a problem of the German citizens' money, now called Bürgergeld, because they still believe, I would say, in incentives to make the individuals great to participate, yeah? Not from the beginning, only when they work hard, when they have incentives, and on the other hand, the authoritarian trap. And you see here clearly, with a participatory UBI, that's what I show on slide number 18, yeah? We move out of that libertarian trap with the basic income, because the basic income guarantees that individuals will not stay poor, that they can exercise their basic and their marginal liberties. They can participate in the trade-off, what we call price liberty. You sell your liberty, for example, working for a firm, and therefore you receive more money, more income, but you do it voluntarily. You have the trade-off, not you have to work to move out of the poverty trap. That's the libertarian trap. Yeah? And therefore participatory UBI, what I call PUBI, prevents the libertarian trap. It secures real freedom, the trade-off, and it prevents incentive-based exploitation of the paternalistic capitalism by arguing even if you are very poor, you have to work hard first. Therefore, I can exploit you because you have to move from a formal freedom to real freedom, because I know that you will work for a very low wage. Yeah. Okay, you see it. With the authoritarian trap, you can solve it also, by the way, because if UBI covers, in my system here, poverty or some additional kind of participation, yeah, I do not discuss it here, then they can move out step by step. You see here the green the green arrows, they can move out of priceless liberty towards the scheme of real freedom. Yeah. So when a basic income at that level exists, the government cannot put force on you because you have the liberty to do with that basic income what you want. And then you can move out of it. So therefore, a clever point of view between the Hong Kong citizens and a Chinese government would have been to give them a basic income, to have self-determination, to decide by themselves, but with the consequence that all other individuals in China should receive that basic income also. Yeah? And the problem is now, then everyone could move out of the authoritarian trap. And I think the regime in China is not provided with the ideas to do that. Yeah? But by that way you see that integrated in new ordoliberalism, that's the new liberal side, we can do a lot in transferring Götz Werner's ideas to science and also to argue and to see exactly what arguments of Götz Werner are scientific and what arguments are difficult to develop scientifically, because these are perhaps arguments on which have intuitive qualification but which are difficult to prove scientifically. But that's what we can do here at the Götz Werner chair and in Freebiz, and therefore it really pays to read Götz Werner's ideas, because these are ideas for a new world, for a paradigm shift which can be justified out of arguments of self-determined, time-sovereign, liberal individuals believing in the unanimous rules of an ex-ante, fair social contract and an ex-post stable social contract. And if we have this world in the future, then not only me, also Götz Werner, now from heaven, would be very happy about that. A further aspect, how to improve this vision of the social contracting from an ex-ante and ex-post point of view of the new ordoliberalism, is to deal with that what we call in science ex-post governance. These ex-post constraints are parts of ex-post governance, but ex-post governance deals with other issues we should integrate in new ordoliberalism also. And the corona pandemic, as well as my approach as a recovery and rescue system in the corona pandemic, the so-called net basic income, show this aspect precisely. We should not optimize social policy measures, just like the idea of perfect means testing and perfect target efficiency, that it's important for that group but not for that group. This means targeting to a group, and targeting to different degrees if you have worked 12 years in that industry or only 3 years, and then what by means testing, if you really need it or not, because your enterprise is harshly involved in the crisis or not so large involved or not at all, or how you measure means testing. So we should not optimize on that. The argument is, and remember Götz Werner's argument on basic income from a bureaucratic point of view, we need to find a simple, robust, sustainable mechanism of aid. Of corona aid. Remember, a just mechanism is socially robust and sustainable. That's the main argument for new ordoliberalism. And what is very important for the ex-post governance is that we are confronted under disasters and under a crisis, which are usually defined by economists, by mainstream economists, as being shocks. Here I would say we should be more demanding, namely they should be defined by unforeseen contingencies. We have not foreseen that crisis. You have not foreseen that shock. It was not plannable. No statistics exist for that contingency. No statistics exist that Corona could have happened. What's now? And that's ex post governance. So this means under these unforeseen contingencies, we can develop only bad means testing and very low target efficiency. That's what the Corona ad based on mainstream measures has shown, even in Germany. Yes, after some weeks, we had in Germany the short allowance system, short money, especially for large firms, and then also small enterprises and others, just like entrepreneurs in the event system, said we need that also. Then the government said they are not system relevant. Then you see that's a point for strategic manipulation against strategy proofness. Then the event managers convinced the government that they are strategically necessary for society. By strategically manipulating this argument of system relevance, more and more persons became system relevant. This is not a very robust setting by means testing and by target efficiency, and in the end, in that way the government is right, the system exploded towards more giving more persons a certain amount and then it's over. My argument is with UBI, this strategic manipulation would never have happened. Who is more important for society and who is less important. We do not take care about that. Strategic manipulation of specific interest groups is then ruled out. Who should receive short-time allowance and who not, and who should receive what kind of means-tested Corona aid and in what way it is target efficient doesn't matter anymore, because any kind of target efficiency didn't survive the long-term test, and means testing was nonsense. I remember the ideas of 20 points, which you had to fulfill to believe the government that the means test hold and you can receive the money. In some sects, I do not live under 0.7. You ruled out. The next, I do not live under 0.11. You ruled out, And what a nonsense. And in the end, now they said many had solved all points, but nevertheless they should have not received it. Now we want the money back. This is not really a good system under the unforeseen contingency called Corona. UBI would have been very, very much better, and my idea of the net basic income shows that even paternalistic capitalism would evade from that, because every capitalist also receives it. That's the basic argument. So UBI is here a specific ex post governance concept. That's very important to notice. Instead of paternalistic failure of an ex ante governance and the related interest group biases on system relevance for realizing high payments out of the financial common pool of the emergency aid, we have now a privilege-free and strategy-proof scheme called Corona Aid UBI, in my case, net basic UBI. It's strategy-proof, and I would say it's renegotiation-proof. It may be renegotiated only with respect to level, and how to finance it, but there I do not see special interest group stakes with respect to receiving a certain amount of money. So now Götz Werner claimed, in my enterprise, I learned that I have to delegate and decentralize management power towards every worker so that he identifies potential of self-determination, creativity and innovation. I understood that this supported all stakeholders of DM, that's his enterprise, of DM, due to mutual confidence. Here you see an additional aspect That's the power distribution. This kind of power distribution is really against paternalistic capitalism. That the capitalist said, the worker has to do what I want, and this is to maximize profits, and therefore I give him some money, which I call wage, and then he can consume. That's his benefit out of that. Against paternalistic capitalism, and it is towards balanced markets. Yeah, utopia versus status quo. Paternalistic capitalism is the status quo, and balanced markets in this vision of a social market economy is the so-called structured utopia. Yeah? And the status quo is biased by power seeking. What is better, a power-balanced utopia or a power-stabilizing status quo? This is an open question. And then you see the utopian view is not so bad, yeah? Because it's related to the goods and the bads of the status quo. It does not stay in itself. It's always related what is the so-called reference point. Okay, and you see here UBI is an exit option for liberty in the way I have defined and for power balancing. His next question was, what is the potential of time sovereignty? I explained him my argument of time sovereignty instead of consumer sovereignty and intrinsic motivation instead of only taking care about extrinsic motivation for societal results. And here is my argument. The utility composition may change. Yeah? Your new thinking depends. Now in economic terms, I know for some it's too narrow, too constrained, but it gives me the option to think about this from a neoclassical utilitarian point of view, that the utility composition changes, solving time sovereignty and intrinsic motivation. By that way, we relax assumptions in economic theory and practiced economic logic. Yeah? For example, the sacrosanct assumptions based on natural paternalistic capitalism have to be substituted by new thinking and innovative ideas stimulated by the impact of UBI. Yeah, that's very important. And if we move to slide 22, we see it when we arrive, that's a reference point, from the means-tested system. In the means-tested system, there is the implicit social contract on what I would see. No one would subscribe to that, but we assume it because we are educated in that or socialized in that we have a certain power, we have a certain power distribution, and we accept that with respect to labor contracts. Yeah, the capitalist set the contract, and the worker has to agree or not. Yeah? And the capitalist set the contract in his, with respect to his well-being and not the well-being of the worker. The well-being of the worker is only respected with the degree that he may sign the contract or not. That's the so-called exit option, or the participation constraint, or, now listen, the renegotiation proofness constraint, that the worker is always willing to work. And you know, when your exit option is Hartz IV or the new German citizens' money, then it's clear that this system is still paternalistic capitalism. Yeah? Because the capitalists structure the contract, and the other ones, if they do it incentive compatible way, yeah, with respect to maximizing profits, and with respect to the exit options, then the workers will work for it, and they have to work it when they are harshly living under the so-called libertarian trap. These are the poor ones. They have to sign. If not, then they cannot survive. So, therefore, you see, here we have an hierarchical directional principal-agent contract and the under means testing, with the principal called the capital or the firm owner having the power to design the labor contract with the agent worker. And if your exit option is very low, then you can be largely exploited. And here it's very clear that UBI gives you a higher exit option to have more bargaining power and to destruct this idea of paternalistic capitalism, that the capitalist takes care about you and what you are doing. Yeah? And we see here this participation constraint, the exit option to the contract, describes the relevance of the exit option, of the outside option of the worker, because this determines your bargaining power. And with a basic income, you have much more bargaining power. We are still inside that contracting ideas. So, therefore, we have bilateral relevance of the exit option, because then what top managers, by the way, are doing, but now seminal workers can do it also. Now I contribute to your profits, to your income, but you have also an exit option. Give my total contribution to you, to me, and then you will not exit the firm. Here you see Götz Werner's argument. Yeah, the workers can also argue, so to speak, against me. Götz Werner, where is your exit option? When would you be willing to shut down DM because it does not pay your interest? Yeah? And all from that exit option on, which is profit for you, is potentially to be redistributed to the workers. It depends only on the bargaining power. Yeah? And in the social contract, you have impartial bargaining power distribution, but you accept based on the social contract, because the firm is a hierarchical structure, that you have another kind of bargaining power if you are a low-skilled worker, a high-skilled worker, a top manager, or the firm owner. Yeah? And that's very important. And you see here also the bilateral relevance of the so-called incentive compatibility constraint. It's not only to give incentives, which are compatible to maximizing the profits of the capitalist. It's also the worker does not only work for the owner, the owner also works for the worker. That's very important. And all business administration approaches had this. They argued this should be covered by a compensation called the entrepreneur's income. In German Unternehmerlohn. And as a student, I was always puzzled that this Unternehmerlohn, this entrepreneurial income, does not play a role in relation to the profit. Because it does not have a role. Usually the profit, the residual claim, is that what the entrepreneur is in it. And for that, he receives what we call in German leistungsloses Einkommen, unearned income. And the income of the entrepreneur, the entrepreneur's income, the Unternehmerlohn, is earned income. He has also to show an effort to run the firm. Therefore, you see, now the power is balanced if you integrate the incentive compatibility constraint for everyone, not only for the workers, but also for the capitalists. You see that now the profit of the firm, the surplus, what all the persons organize, is in principle a common pool, and how you distribute that common pool depends on the bargaining power and the special skills of the persons. And you see also that hierarchical unidirectional contracting is over. This is a paradigm shift in labor contract per se. But on the other hand, when you change also the utility functions of individuals, not only the contracting power, we add to that the aspect, and that's the potential of UBI, not only to change power in contracting due to the exit option, you add also a change in socialization. Therefore, you show the paradigm shift, provoked by basic income, that you shift from a certain utility system to another one. And the utility system under means testing is that in what all of us is to need, the so-called additive separability utility theorem, that your work gives you only, because it's based on effort, gives you only negative items. This means a cost, effort costs. Yeah? Your work is not good. It does not have a meaning for you. For you in your life, only consumption based on that income for which you have to show effort, yeah, gives you a positive, yeah, payment, a positive payoff. Work is only negative, yeah, and we all know that some workers and some managers have intrinsic motivation, yeah. Then over the time you have added some intrinsic motivation, but that's not enough, because this additive separability thinking, work hard to have good consumption, yes, is old-fashioned. In a system with UBI, the individuals say beside the exit option argument to have contracting power balance in labor contracts and all other contracts, we also shift by the time sovereignty aspect of UBI towards making all, even our working time, consumption. And this is pure time sovereignty, yeah? Then it is not additive separable, it's multiplicative, yeah? Your leisure time is multiplicative, yeah, in the utility effect to voluntary work, unpaid work, yeah? It's multiplicative to earned work, yeah? Yeah? And to consumption time, yeah? Because all in your life is more or less consumption. You have to show effort for organizing your consumption. This may be paid work, effort, yeah, effort in your garden. This means unpaid effort, effort to show, to exercise leisure. Yeah, you have to go to the golf court before you can exercise your leisure time on the golf court, and so on and so forth. But all is related towards everyone's consumption, or everyone relates it to his own consumption, not to the consumption of another person, to dependent work. Clearly, with your contribution to by organizing earned income, you work for others, but you take care about, is that work related towards intrinsic motivation? This means I like to do that work, yeah? And then you have multiplied utility. You can see on that slide 22 how that utility function changes. And then what is very interesting, when you finance that UBI, which gives the shift from additive separability to multiplicative utility. This means from the means testing system, MS, to the UBI system, yeah, re-socializing individuals, yeah, then one can show that the value-added tax does not have the so-called revenue peak. Yeah, it's very interesting to see. It's intuitively clear because all is consumption. The more UBI helps to get that vision, all is consumption. The more you are willing to organize consumption, therefore, yeah, the tax base to finance UBI consumption increases. The relationship is monotonically increasing between tax revenue and basic income. And then you can find the basic income level you would like to get. Yeah? If it's the maximum tax, yeah, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Therefore, you see, it seems to be that the value-added tax, and that's another argument of Götz Werner, but due to a completely different reasoning, yes, fits best as a financing system of a UBI, not a wage or an income tax, not a capital tax, because they still have their peaks, and then it might be that basic income is not financeable, but in a value-added tax-financed basic income system, the individuals can choose, yeah, how much, yeah, we would like to delegate of our consumption to UBI and to reconsume then by equal sharing that part, yeah, which contributes to my consumption. It's in principle very easy. So, and by that way, I would say this socialization effect gives you time sovereignty with respect to the exit option effect of UBI, with respect to the utility function UBI and with respect to the financing effect of UBI. All these effects are dependent on UBI in itself. And what many persons do is not to think about it. They separate taxation from the effects of UBI. Yeah? My argument here is you cannot do that because UBI may change your socialization, and by that way your willingness or your acceptance to finance it in that or in that way. That's very important. All is put together. And by that way you see also if growth is good or not. Yeah, depends on what kind of system do we have in our head. Yeah? And this multiplicative utility function, I argue, is the only one which gives us, as a formula, what we call time sovereignty, what we call self-determination. In the additive separability system, individuals will become self-determined only to a certain degree. They don't exercise time sovereignty. And I think that's very important. Thank you very much.